Good afternoon, and welcome. Diversity. Everybody talks about it, but all of you know that mostly we don't see it. At the Anita Borg Institute, we believe passionately that women belong at the table creating technology, and I've devoted my life to that. The little-known secret about diversity is that it varies a lot. Organizations vary widely in terms of how they embrace diversity and how welcoming they are to diversity in its broadest sense. There's no question that there's a business case for diversity. And we're very fortunate today to have a really diverse panel as they talk about diversity and what it means to them, and also what it means to you. So we're going to start by Yiying, who is a brand expert and creative director who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've asked each of them to talk about, first of all, introduce themselves briefly, but then also talk about what diversity means to them. And what you're going to hear is a pretty broad definition of diversity. So Yiying?
Thank you, Telle. My name is Yang Liu, and I'm Australian Chinese. Yi means happy, and Yi means creative. I was born in Shanghai, moved to Sydney, Australia when I was a teenager, finished my college in Sydney, Australia, and London, UK. Now live in San Francisco, and that explains the reason why that my accent is all over the place. To me, diversity means almost like elephant in a room. I use this metaphor because also in China, the elephant also was used as a metaphor. We know the Chinese idiom, 盲人摸象, which is we have the blindfolded people like 6 blindfolded people try to touch this elephant, and everybody touching different parts of the elephant. So their notion of the elephant varies, depends on which part they touch. So for me, coming from a design artistic background, but went to a technology high school because I had a bet with my best friend. She said, "You suck at math. You would never be able to go to one of the hardest high school in Shanghai." And I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And it was really hard for 7 years, went through one of the toughest high school that focused a lot on STEM. And I was naturally right-brain orientated, so I was more literature and art orientated, but had to go through very heavy training in math and science. At the time, seems really daunting. But now that I look back, I went to technology high school. I was teaching Adobe softwares for almost 8 years at school. It really helped me to see the world in a holistic way, because it's a balance between the right brain and left brain. And I think for me, diversity is to be able to get in touch, not only from your business side, but also your creative side.
Thank you. Blake is the CEO of GoDaddy and somebody I've watched transform the company. So why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Blake Irving, CEO of GoDaddy. Was Chief Product Officer at Yahoo for a while, was at Microsoft for 15 years, and did most of their SaaS software up to 2007. I'm not, similar to Yiying, I'm not the typical technology guy. I was actually an art major as an undergrad. Got a master's degree, was a typographer for quite a while, was a musician before that, and believe that diversity of spirit, diversity of cultures, diversity of genders build better bands, build better products, build better cultures independently inside of businesses and outside of businesses. And what we've tried to do in almost every group I've ever run is try to get as close to matching your customer base as you possibly can. So if you have a very diverse customer base, which GoDaddy does with 17 million customers all over the world, you try to replicate that as best you can so you have as many women in your business by percentage as you have customers. Same thing with other cultures around the world. And I'm just a very firm believer in that. And for those of you who know GoDaddy and think back 10 years, that might seem completely out of sorts with what you're thinking right now.
Can't wait to hear more. And Gopi is the CTO of Tata and somebody who I've admired in his commitment to diversity in India.
So Telle, I was, when Yiying was talking about the elephant in the room, I was thinking that she's being rude. She's talking about me, but I think she was not. But it's a pleasure being here today. You know, in my family, I'm an engineer. My wife's an engineer. My son's preparing to be an engineer, and my daughter's an engineer. So we really do not have much diversity in that sense. But on my mom's side of the family, you know, they're non-engineers. On my dad's side, I have 40 engineering cousins. So I'm sort of a mix. I made a movie in my mother tongue, Telugu, released it, learned a lot in the process, and also interacted with a diverse set of people coming from various backgrounds, and saw that that is the key to success. In the corporate world, diversity to me is diversity of thought, for sure, but also diversity of action. And I'll give you an example. We conduct a competition called Innovista at Tata. We've done it for 12 years, and we've looked at the data across these 12 years. And what we found was that winning teams have double the number of women participants compared to all competing teams. So gender diversity does matter, and there are many more data which I can talk about from work that we do, not something which is generally available. So I'm convinced that to be successful in technology and to be innovative, you need a diverse team.
Thank you. And Yiying, you have a very unique view of diversity, and I know you have a story to tell about how you had this impact on a high-tech company. So why don't you tell us?
I think from my own experience, I had a pretty comfortable life when I moved to Australia, and I was teaching at university. I was running my own studio. What really made me decided to move to America, really think about it, 10 years ago, I don't know anyone in Silicon Valley. I didn't even know that Silicon Valley is a place. I thought it was a city, and I tried to Google it, and I can't find it on Google Maps. So anyway, the reason why that I connected with Silicon Valley was actually because this illustration I did later on become the Twitter farewell, if you guys were Twitter users early in the days. But what's really interesting is I was contracting with a lot of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. And I remember I was working with this large Silicon Valley tech company. And I remember at the time that I was working on a logo and a T-shirt design for the team. And the lead of the team, the manager of the team, is this German, very stern, very sort of engineering guy that doesn't really smile. And we were working together for a month. And it was amazing that on the last day, he actually made my logo onto a T-shirt and gave it to me as a thank you gift, like a surprise gift. And then he said this with a big smile on his face, and the whole team was like, "Oh my God, what just happened? You like what did you do?" And he came to me. He said, "I want to thank you. Actually, a lot of people in my team didn't know." Even though I'm a manager in the engineering team, I used to be a graphic designer 20 years ago. And at the time, I just got married, I had kids. I wasn't able to make enough money to support the family. So I had to quit becoming a graphic designer and learn to code and become an engineer at the end. And in the last 20 years, I always knew something is missing. But until working with you last month, like during that month, we're working on this project as a side project, but that doesn't feel like working. It actually feels like taking a break. So I want to thank you. In that moment, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, he looks so different. I've never seen him smiling." And that was the moment that I realized that it's not even my job, it's not my career, it's my calling, is to move to the epicenter of tech community to bring more art and restore the balance in people. I believe that everybody could achieve this balance of the left brain and the right brain. It's just a matter of we got to realize the importance of creativity and art.
Thank you. And Gopi, TCS is famous for its diversity in the technical roles. And I mean, can you give us some words of wisdom about how Tata Sons has managed that?
I think actively is how I'd look at it in terms of considering how we bring in diversity. As an example, is we not only go to the top-notch institutions, we go across. And I'll explain why. In India, if you want to get into the IITs, the Indian Institute of Technology, you actually start preparing when you're in grade 8. And you do not prepare from home. You prepare going off to a remote school, which basically prepares you for the entrance exam. This privilege is oftentimes given to the boys. And many times the girls are kept at home for fear of sending them out. So in this environment, if you go only to the IITs, you'll get a small pool of diverse talent. So you need to go broader. Some of the best talent, they're there in the regional institutions in urban areas, both women and men. So you need to bring in the right kind of talent as step one. And then when you hire a minority in whatever sense, you need to ensure that you give them the ambience to continue to think the way they do and not ask them to behave like the majority. So many times what happens is people hire diversity and then expect them to behave like the majority and incentivize them becoming like the majority. And that serves no purpose because you want them to think differently and bring that diversity in all that they do. So you need to keep track of why you're doing diversity and keep that going. In TCS, what they do as an example of going that extra mile is there are two major events in the life of an Indian woman for sure. I'm sure it is the same case around the world. One is marriage and the other is parenthood. So when your spouse is located somewhere else, TCS provides the opportunity, given their size, that they will relocate you wherever without a problem. So they will put an active effort and make sure that that happens. Secondly, when you're going through the maternity period, so 1 year before and 1 year after, you are put into a different pool and evaluated in a different way. And I've seen organizations where this is not done and it doesn't work very well. So these are just two examples of how you make diversity comfortable and let them be who they are and make them successful the way they are.
I just think it's important to realize that these are actions that you can take. I mean, integrating design and technology and also fully understanding how you recruit. I'd also like for Blake to talk about the transformation that I've seen at GoDaddy. When I first met Blake, he was new at GoDaddy, and as the community of a lot of women, they were not very happy with the GoDaddy brand, and I've watched them really change. So do you want to talk about the transformation?
Sure. You know, GoDaddy, and I think most people in the room that have been familiar with the brand for the 20-odd years we've been around know that we emphasized Super Bowl advertising on how to grow the business, even what domains were. And the way that we did that was by doing what I would call incredibly controversial, attention-getting advertising that did it on the backs of women, right? I've been told by many customers, wow, your ads were misogynistic, they didn't honor women, et cetera. And as an individual that grew up in a family that had 50% men, 50% women, I even as a customer of GoDaddy, and I was before I took the role, I didn't know what to do with that. Now, when I started interviewing for this role, and I remember when I was asked, I thought, oh, man, I don't know if I'm interested. I know what you do, I don't understand the advertising, how you present yourselves, and I don't know enough about the business. When I found out about the business, how large it was, how much it had been growing, and then I started meeting people in the business, it didn't square with the way that they were presenting themselves in the external world through ads. And so when I had the conversation with board members and thinking of whether I'm going to come in or not, I said, look, I'd flatten, if I was going to do this role, I'd flatten the platform, I'd go global, and I'd square up the brand with who we are, what we do, and who we do it for, so people would feel proud about it. And the men and women that I worked in the company, they wanted to feel proud. And proud means everybody brings their best self to work every day, that you actually go build a value system that says it's about diversity. It's about trying to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, and the way we represent women when we do advertising as strong, capable, small businesses, which is who we serve, that are fighting the good fight. And 58% of women or small businesses in the United States are run by women. Well, for God's sakes, why are you going to actually push them away when you can bring them closer? So we squared that up and then went as far as saying, look, we're going to start recruiting people that are women, that know what we're doing is genuine from the inside out, because any transformation has to start inside and then work its way out. Our first CTO hire was a woman. My first board member that I was able to bring into the company was a woman, Betsy Raphael. And we just started doubling down on making sure that it was an inclusive, very aware environment that was great for women. And we've done a lot all the way up to exposing salary data by level publicly to say this is how much women are making, this is how much men are making, and whether it's good or bad. We've gone backwards one year in how much managers were making. You have to let people know both the good and the bad, so you're shining a light on it, so other people will do the same thing. And we've been super consistent with that, as you know, and have been continuing with that drumbeat, and have got to the point where 50% of our new college graduate engineering entries into the company are women, and almost 50% of our interns are women. And you know, when you look at the overall numbers in our industry, it's in the low 20s. So we got a lot of work to do. We're going to keep publishing that data, making it available, and you know, exposing our vulnerabilities, which is part of building, I think, a culture of inclusion as well.
One of the things that people believe is that when you talk about diversity, it's quite common for companies to go out and find the nearest woman who's working at there and figure that they would then turn over diversity to them. You notice that we're both talking about what has worked, and there are both men and women who are involved in creating change. When I first met Blake, for example, our community was pretty angry, and he got right out there and talked on Twitter with all the women who wanted to have answers. And I do believe that one of the most powerful roles you can do is to be transparent and talk about you know, what you're doing. Any comments about the role of men versus women in terms of changing diversity, and once again, in a broader sense? Anyone?
Well, so I think that it is an equal and shared responsibility. If you think about diversity and leadership, you want to ensure that the principles of diversity, so the way I think about it is to be successful as an innovator, you need to create with freedom, nurture with passion, and change with detachment. This is diversity. You many times will not have all of that in one box or in one person. So you need to ensure that diversity happens, whether you're a person in a role that you can make it happen as a man or a woman, it doesn't matter.
Well, you had an idea about how to change the brand, huh? Yiying?
It's really funny because we literally just connected a week ago to do the speaker prep. And I was actually just joke around. I was like, Blake, can I ask you, you guys are one of the biggest domain company, and you guys are GoDaddy. Do you happen to also own GoMummy.com? And he's laughing, right?
Turns out we do.
Yeah, turns out you do. And so I was so geeky. It took me 12 hours to fly here. So on the flight, I actually Googled, I Googled, and I actually type into my address, and it redirect to GoDaddy.com. I was like, okay, they actually did own this thing. So mind you, I was on a 12-hour flight, so I have a lot of things to do, but I choose to do this. I thought, I have to visualize this. Can we show that on the big screen too? Yeah. So I visualized this, and we have Wi-Fi on the flight. So I actually WhatsApped Blake, and he's like,
That's
damn,
awesome.
he's like, damn funny. And I was like, it's not just funny. I thought about it, and I asked myself the reason why that I moved to San Francisco Bay Area. I wanted to bring more art to the tech community, and using art as a vehicle to help company to really bring company and corporate company and also the social good together. So I thought about how can we do with this GoMummy.com, and I had an idea. And I had an idea, which is using GoMummy as initiative. How about GoDaddy support mummies around the world who actually are entrepreneurs? Because if you think about it, it's actually a huge problem. This is a huge problem. I was reading this on Atlantic. I was reading this on Forbes. 41% of females couldn't stay in their job. They had to leave their job in order to take care of the kids. And according to Forbes, a lot of times female founders had huge problems raising money because the investors are concerning that they wouldn't be able to focus on the business after they have kids. And a lot of like, we're not even going to start to talk about frozen eggs or that sort of thing. A lot of females are so scared that they're going to lose their job that they wouldn't even consider of having kids. And these are the huge problems. That's a huge elephant in the room. And I love elephant. And I love to solving the problem. And I love to give the love to the problem itself. So then I thought, well, that makes sense. What if we have larger corporation, and we have 2% of corporate social responsibility, and support moms who are entrepreneurs. And we can create programs like that to really support moms around the world to start their small businesses.
I love it.
Yeah.
Nothing to announce, but I think nothing to announce, but we riffed on that idea and was like, yeah, it could be something pretty cool. Most of our philanthropy today goes to small businesses in underprivileged neighborhoods where we're trying to help folks, get successful so they can stay in business and not go out of business, because attrition rate for small business is pretty high. But back to the question Telle asked, which was, what do men versus women, and how do you feel about like? It's men's responsibility when they have 75% of the roles in business, and there are more Fortune 500 CEOs named John than there are women CEOs in the Fortune 500. It is the responsibility of men to bring women into the conversation.
I think it's 7%. Isn't that about right?
Yeah, that's right.
Good point.
And so there's a huge opportunity for us to bring men into the conversation, make sure that we're training them in language and promotion philosophy, and how to discuss women openly and know the differences, because there are gender differences in the way they attack problems, and think about it and bring them in.
So I'd like, in closing, because I really believe that action is what it's about, I'd ask each of them to briefly, in a few sentences, give you an action that you can take in terms of increasing diversity. Gopi?
So first, I think I give you an action on your flight back. We are called Tata Sons.
Tata daughter it is.
So I think, again, think about what I just said. In order to be successful, especially as pioneers, as entrepreneurs, as startups, you need to think creatively, so create with freedom. You need to be able to nurture with passion, and change with detachment. So ensure that right from hiring to managing your workforce, to appraising your workforce, you have the right metrics which encourage your own productivity.
Yiying?
My suggestion, it's about finding the diversity in yourself, and everybody could do it. Whether you're engineers or you're musicians, if you're engineers, doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to be creative. If you're doing coding and if you're using your left brain a lot, go to music concerts, go to art galleries, explore something that you don't normally do. If you're a musician, try to learn to code. Try to do something that you don't feel comfortable with. I'm one of those people that kind of accidentally step into the STEM area, but I'm thankful that I did it. It's almost like covering your good eye and using your lazy eye. And I think once you can find the diversity, which is the left brain and the right brain in yourself, you will be finding the balance and happiness.
Break.
So, yeah, my advice is going to be for the guys in the room. So, guys, think about it. Realize that you are part of the solution. It's not a woman's problem. It's men's problem. This is something that we can help tremendously just by applying conscious thought to who we hire, how we hire, what language do we use, do we describe our business as a Stanford dorm, which honestly we were doing 5 years ago. We don't do it anymore. Why? Because we thought about it, we changed our language, we did things that were demonstrative, that made it a better environment. You guys can do that.
There you have it. All you can do. So let's thank the panelists, and thank you.
Thanks, Telle.
Thank you.